What's good, everybody? My name is Steven Hyder. This is Gate City Sports Channel where the cerebral NFL fan comes for about 10 minutes of daily content. I got a guest with me today. Allie's going to come on and she's going to talk a little bit about football with me. She's someone who's coached herself before, someone who really understands the sport. And we're going to review some film. We're going to look at the first two opening possessions in Atlanta, the first two opening possession from the Jets. And basically what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to marry our opinion to what the film shows, because at the end of the day, are you 6 weeks from Sunday? The film never lies. The film tells you the truth of what's going on. So with that said, Allie, if you want to introduce yourself, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Ali Michelle Lombard. I played for the Lafayette Rams in 1998. We won the state title shortly after that. I also coached over at Jamestown High School for a bit. My experience is high school ball, mostly offensive, defensive line work. And so I love our offensive line. And in terms of the Eagles, it's great. And I just love watching film and talking football. So we're going to see what this looks like.
Before we started off, you and I, we were kind of talking backstage, and I just want to include everybody in what we were saying, because we have two young quarterbacks. They're literally separated by, I think, one draft class here. And they both have their own strengths. They both have their own, areas of improvement. I want to really call them weaknesses. Yes, they're weaknesses, but weaknesses can be turned into strength over time. Backstage, one of the things that we talked about is that Jalen Hurts gives you the ability to play off schedule in the offense and to do some things in the running game that challenges a defense. Sometimes playing off schedule is a horrible thing. Sometimes it's a good thing. When you need an off schedule quarterback, you're kind of glad you got one. With that said, when we were talking about Gardner Minshew, one of the things that we said was, after watching the film, the young man is very good at the pre-snap at reading what the defense is giving you and getting the ball out. But you and I both said, we question how strong the arm is and whether or not he would have a lot of success against better coverage defenses that can bring pressure. I mean, what do you think so far from just before we even show everybody what we saw in film, some opening statements about these two young quarterbacks?
So, Gardner is definitely great before the snap. I'll certainly give you that. And as much as we can talk about arm strength being an issue, there are various reasons for that. His accuracy is within a window that is good. You want predictability, you want consistency, especially quote-unquote staying on schedule. And one of the guys on Jacob Media, I forget which one, called this a zero margin for offense. He was talking about the run game, but it's true in the pass game too. It's really true the entire thing. It's okay, how can we best play complementary football? How can we best protect the defense? How can we best assist with the special teams? And sometimes being on schedule is that. I will say this before we get into the film and before we go too far off. I question Hurts' ability to play off schedule. I'm being very clear what I mean when I say that. So he has great running ability. And to the degree that run options are schemed in the play, he's fantastic. He's maybe more consistently explosive than Miles is. And you got a bunch of Miles Sanders fans, I'm sure. But one of his biggest habits early in the season, this might be even on the film, is he'd drift out of the pocket. He'd float out of the pocket to the right. There'd be vision issues. There'd be arm strength accuracy issues because of his platform, because he's outside the pocket. Usually he threw those away. In the Giants game, he threw a pick right before halftime, which changed a lot. So Minshew has some great ability, pre-snap. He can work on his arm strength and his accuracy even better than it is. Right now it's acceptable, right? It's good enough against most defenses most weeks, short term. It could be better. But Hurts is a great runner, and he's made some great throws. He just needs to do it consistently.
Yeah, there's a lot to break down there, right? Which is, the first play I vividly remember Hurts coming in, and I said, okay, there's something to this kid playing off schedule, was the Green Bay game where he extended a play and hit Greg Ward Jr. in the end zone. I do think that you're right. There can be some consistency issues with playing off schedule with Jalen, including times he should definitely not be off schedule, and he's been working towards that. We've seen that this season. It's probably one of the bigger takeaways is, Jalen Hurts has been trying to play a little bit more on schedule with the offense. They brought Brian Johnson down. He's been meeting with Nick Sirianni. I broke down the play that unfortunately got Goddard injured, but it was a really good way of working the pocket from Hurts. That was something we hadn't seen up to that point, which was a glide and slide technique from the pocket and hit your open receiver. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Those things have to come into play. It's a quarterback that it's kind of shocking that he even admitted that he really wasn't taught the intricacies of playing the position until he got out to Oklahoma, which I'm not trying to take shots at Nick Saban because Nick Saban's got 3 guys on Sunday taking snaps right now.
Right.
But Nick Saban struggled for a long time getting quarterbacks to Alabama. That's something that Max Brown, former USC and Pitt quarterback, brought up to me, that when he was offered by Alabama, a lot of people always say, like, why wouldn't you take an Alabama offer? And he's like, man, up until that point, who would they really start it in the NFL? Who would they really put through? I mean, they weren't producing guys really. And I thought that was just an incredible statement that he made. And I was just like, oh, okay, like, it's a pretty big coaching job. Like, it's a pretty big coaching job from a guy that has the arm talent. But I won't lie, there's definitely some fundamentals that need to be improved upon in terms of the throwing mechanics.
For sure.
All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with the Atlanta game. We're going to go first drive of the Atlanta game. I'm going to pull it up for everybody to see, guys. We're going to let it play out. When it gets done, Allie and I will come back and we'll talk about what we're seeing, like what happened exactly. Sorry, guys, I got to go to the share video file and pull the video up, so it takes a second. All right, guys, first drive, Atlanta. Here we go. Hopefully. All right, so what I want to start off with here, Ali, is the fact that there's a clear establishment of rhythm from the football game. And what I mean is the first 3 plays in particular are all about getting Jalen Hurts into a rhythm, which it came by numbers-based RPO reads. Before we start, Ali, do you want to fill everybody in on like what it means when we say numbers-based RPOs? Like, what is the quarterback reading?
Sure. So I almost wanted to, if I can, distinguish that between that leverage and movement base. Is that okay for this?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So when I learned RPOs back in the day, it was movement based. It was really an extension of the read option game. It was almost a triple option, which we can talk about, and they talk about that on the broadcast all the time. That's what they're really talking about, where the third read is a pass play, a slant, a bubble screen, something like that to a receiver. And so that's what a movement based RPO is. So you basically, with read option, which is kind of my baby, you have the scrape exchange or the gap exchange. So the end main line of scrimmage, the edge crashes down on the running back. The quarterback has the ability to get outside, and then the stack backer on the backside fills the space. But if he fills the space, he leaves something open. So that's movement based. With leverage based, it's based on leverage of the receivers, et cetera. What we're talking about right now, what we're really seeing is numbers based. So if there are 8+ in the box, quote unquote, a heavy box, the read for the quarterback pre-snap is, okay, this is the throw. If it's less than that, if it's a light box, 6 or even 7, there are some run plays are available.
Exactly. Guys, basically, when you go to a numbers-based RPO, it's just a really simple read. Like, how many guys are in the box defending the run? That's going to dictate a very predetermined play. And the first 2 plays of the game are very obvious number-based RPOs. So when we say a movement-based RPO, think of the glance route. Like that glance route that we saw really introduced into the league by New Orleans, and it was really popular down there at LSU with Brady running that for that offense. That's, when you're reading a single player, like what this guy does will determine what we do with the football. As opposed to numbers, it's just simply 7 box or fewer, we probably run at them. If they got 8 or more in the box, that's an automatic pass. So they want to establish that rhythm right from the jump with Jalen Hurts, but very easy, quick throws. And what stands out to me is that instead of trying to throw outside too far, like the furthest man on the outside trying to come back on the tunnel screen, they're targeting the slot, which I feel like they got away from that as the season progressed and really went into these harder to execute plays, especially when the defense knows it's coming. So I do think that Atlanta not knowing what we were going to throw at them, I think that plays a part, right? Like them not knowing to expect this numbers-based RPO tunnel screen action probably plays a role in how successful we were moving right down the field right from the jump. I mean, how do you read that? Like trying to establish the rhythm. Like what do you think Nick? Like what do you think Nick's trying to do here in those first 3 plays or so?
So people talk about establishing rhythm with quarterbacks a lot. I think they mean different things. I think it's useful for Hurts to have successful completions. I think it's more useful for the offense to stay on schedule. When I say stay on schedule, I mean stay ahead of the chains. And
Sure.
that's really that margin of error I was talking about earlier. So you want to stay ahead of the change. You want to be consistent on offense. You want to be consistently productive. And, those plays that you were showing, that's consistent productivity on offense. They're not hard throws. They're not hard reads. And to that extent, getting them in a rhythm is a good thing, and it makes sense.
Yeah, and that's what I saw was just getting them into a rhythm. Now, the third play, which was the 3rd consecutive completion to Quez Watkins, by the way, is a play that intrigues the crap out of me because they come back with a double wingback set. So they're in a double wing. But this time they're still an 11-man. This isn't 12. This isn't 13-man. It's 11-man personnel, double wings. They have, I believe it was Goddard as one wing, and then they have Quez as the other wing. And then they basically they hit him with a little fake in there to Miles Sanders, which the defense immediately goes for. That's where they're expecting the ball. And then they hit just a little quick out kind of, into the flats to Quez Watkins. Nothing fancy, nothing special. Doesn't gain a ton of yardage. But what I think it does is it puts the defense on their heels to be reactionary. I mean, what did you think about that play?
I think that was probably one of my favorite ones in the sense that that didn't read to me to be a numbers based RPO. That seemed to be a read option play, a triple option as I was talking about it. So you've got the fake to Sanders, you've got the end crashing down. Hurts could run with it, but he's got like you said that quick out to Quez, and that is an extension of the running game, quote unquote. That's of all of the Atlanta film that I looked at, that was one of the plays I was the most impressed with in terms of something that's schemable going forward.
Love that play. And it might be just because maybe we're from an older generation to where we remember a lot of 21 personnel and unique looks from the running game. Maybe that plays into it because we didn't grow. We were kind of coming of age as they were advancing 11-man personnel. So that might play a role in it for me personally. But I'm a fan of that. That was a really well drawn up play. And we're going to see it in the Jets game, by the way. It's just out of a different formation. It's out of a slightly different utilization in terms of the personnel they throw on the field. but still, it's the same kind of concept there. What I noticed after those first 3 plays is immediately, Allie, they go right into the running game. So the very first play is a zone read. The end crashes. Jalen takes it and takes off for an easy first down, which I thought was really smart because now you really, really got them on their heels.
It's all about that triple threat.
Exactly, right? Like it's like their worst fears being realized. The speed of the Eagles on the outside is eating them up on this drive, and they don't have an answer to how to stop it.
Exactly.
After that, guys, I see a little deception. So the next play on the sequence of that is it's a counter. Like they're going to show you a counter, right? Counter just being basically, guys, is when you're pulling. You get different ones. Like this is a guard tackle counter. You can get guard in an F counter, which is like a tight end or an F back, basically running the counter. But what they don't do is they don't follow the counter, right? So they get the defense flowing one way, but then they sneak Miles back out the other way to get the edge. Once again, getting our speed to the edges, creating a problem for the defense. Which another one, like it's like, okay, like I like this. They followed that up with that inside zone where Miles kind of got stood up. He's following Seumalo's hip. Looks like an inside zone play to me. Nothing too special there. That was just kind of falling back a little bit, I'd say, into a base offensive package. But then they are immediately getting back up on the next play, and they're setting them up for the okie doke. This whole time we're seeing like they're hitting the acceleration in so many ways. They come out, they got you in 11-man personnel. They're throwing the ball to the edges. They're making you get up there. Then they start slicing you with the running game, and now you're like, crap, we got to start focusing on Hurts and Sanders. And then what do they do to you? They go empty back set, spread the formation. I'm pretty sure that was 11-man personnel. It was a 3-by-2 split. They go up to the boundary side where you got your two receivers up there. I believe that was Ertz and Devontae, and they beat you with a little rubber out to Devontae Smith. And it was a really, really well thrown ball by Jalen Hurts. To be honest, that was one of his better throws of the season.
Yeah, he put it right in the bucket. And that was not only a throwing from a firm foundation and a nice platform, that was a timing-based throw. And Hurts has struggled with timing through the season, but this was a really good one.
I think there's a very, very good question I want to get into, guys. Jalen, what's up, buddy? 2020. Thank you for leading us to this question because I do think this is something that needs to be addressed right now. This is a very good question. Why doesn't Sirianni call run plays with Hurts under center so they take advantage of play action like Dak? Allie, do you want to give your perspective on what happens if you go tight to formation?
Okay, so I apologize. I missed part of your question. So under center. So Hurts has been under center throughout the year, more often later, and I think that's a good look for him. There are advantages and disadvantages. So play action can and be and often is more effective under center. You can hide the ball easier. Their angles are different, and when Hurts can be consistently great at taking those deep shots off that play action, that's an absolutely good move you should make. One thing that I want to throw in real quick is Shanahan's scheme and the wide zone and the PA boot off of that. That's all from under center. So, yeah, I think that Hurts should get more looks under center for sure. I even like the pistol. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole. But, yeah, we should definitely diversify the looks. Hurts being in shotgun all the time is hurting this game.
So when he says the pistol formation, guys, I mean, we ran that a little bit with Doug last year. It's just basically when the running back is directly behind the quarterback. And basically why they do that is so that way it's not so easy to predict which side the run's going to go to, which side you're gonna send that running back to. It creates a little intrigue or mystery, if you will, with the defense, and that's one of the benefits of playing something like pistol. And Doug tapped into that last season, to be honest. So Jalen's bringing up a point here. Jalen, I think we appreciate you being in the chat, man, because I know you're a guy to play defensive line and offensive line, so you got pretty unique perspectives on things. And he says, to counter the misdirection in college, they are teaching linebackers not to read the triangle by itself, but tighten alignment in motion. Exactly, right? Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's kind of like when you're teaching a cornerback, how to play the ball, right? It's not getting full by the upper half of the body. Play the hips. Play the hips. What I'll say is as we go into the Jets game, there's going to be a lot of similarities, but there's going to be some very clear differences, guys. I mean, there will be some very obvious things that you guys will see that we'll tackle there's some clear differences, and it's going to start with the utilization of personnel is going to be different. But without further ado, guys, I'm going to go ahead and try to pull that up. It might take a second for it to share, just because the connection speed's a little slower than I would like it to be right now, guys. But I'm going to pull it up. We're going to go first drive of the Jets game. Give it 1 second to pull up, guys. So what I noticed here is as we get into the rhythm, like what were they trying to do to establish rhythm here? Number one, they were trying to run the ball. Like, I mean, that was quite clear. They're trying to run the ball, and they're trying to run the ball out of very heavy tight end formations. As a matter of fact, I don't believe any one of those plays was in 11-man personnel. I'm pretty sure they were all in 12 or 13-man personnel, which is the first thing that stood out to me here. To where in the first game we looked at it against Atlanta, they were trying to hit them with the tunnel screen to get the rhythm started. In this game, they're trying to hit them with tight end screens and stuff like that to establish the quarterback into a rhythm. Did anything stand out to you about the way they were trying to establish a rhythm here?
Yeah, I would agree with what you're saying. I do like is a loaded word. I found it interesting and possibly productive that they used more 12, 13 personnel in this game versus Atlanta. I think it's good for us to figure out who our best players are doing what. I like the fact that they ran the ball against heavier boxes. They even used some tighter splits as they did in the Giants game, and still, ran the ball anyway, which I found encouraging. And then obviously the screen passes to the tight ends were a nice counter to some of those heavy boxes for sure.
Yeah, and that's what I thought was really interesting is that there's positives and negatives to everything you can do in terms of the game plan and the concepts you run, right? If you go tighter to formation, there's no reason why you're seeing more people in the box. Like, so you either have to be very deceptive with your runs, like when they do cross zone and stuff like that, or you need to be very deceptive with what you do in the passing game underneath those tight formations, because you're going to invite more people in if you do that. That's factually true, no doubt about it. I do think that Stoutland and Sirianni and Steichen and Brian Johnson and Patullo, I think those guys are really good at designing it, though. I really do think that they've done a really good job with tight formations this season. I don't know how successful you'll be into the future as more and more game film gets out there on you and what you're doing, because they'll start learning how to read cues on you, just like any team will. They'll pick up cues to let them know when you're running and when you're throwing out of that. But right now, I don't think teams have the answer for it, and I think we saw a very effective running there. There was a couple things I noticed, right? You do see them; they'll still go to a 3-by-1 set. The third play of the game is a 3-by-1 set, to which then they hit you with an outside zone run. So they're spreading you out a little bit, get you out of the box, and they're gonna run at you. The fourth play was a double wing, so they're in that double wing formation again, guys, just like we saw in Atlanta. This time, though, they're using 2 tight ends. They give you a cross zone look, so they make you think they're going to run that cross zone run, but they don't. So they're giving you that look with, I believe that was Stahl and with Sanders, and then they just basically hit Goddard on the tight end screen out there off of it, which is really smart, really deceptive from the coaching staff, right? But let's just say it, Allie. The truth of the matter is this. These plays are not hard to execute, to be quite honest, right? Like, if the defense is giving you the exact look you want them in, this is an easy game plan to execute no matter who's behind, who's the signal caller. Now, I will give him his due here, because the touchdown pass, that's a big-time throw. Big-time throw from Minshew on that touchdown pass. I know a lot of people were like, yo, Gate, he underthrew that. He did. But look at the reason why he underthrew that one, right? That one's not as egregious to me as the second possession touchdown pass, where he clearly underthrew from what I think is a fairly clean pocket. But this one, like, he's got a defensive tackle right up in his grill. So he couldn't really get his base behind him to throw the football the way he wanted to. But he read that pre-snap. I think that's the most impressive thing about it, Allie, is that he saw the linebacker on Goddard pre-snap and said, oh, that's where I'm going with the football.
Right. And I mean, certainly the pre-snap motion helped with that. I mean, that's why you have pre-snap motion. I know the coaching staff takes a lot of crap for not being very inventive pre-snap with motion, stuff like that. There was a lot of that in the game. They do it, and when they do it, it's effective. They just seem to optimize those opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I do think that there was more pre-snap motion in the Jets game than what I saw in the Atlanta game. But to be fair, they didn't need a ton of pre-snap motion in the Atlanta game. I think it's about feeling out the ebb and flow of games for a young coaching staff and to know when you need to start, going pre-snap motion. And there's something you said before we get further into the film that I want to bring everybody in on the discussion about, that we've talked about off camera. Why are we running so many rub routes?
Are you asking me that right now?
Yes, sir.
Because the receiver get off the line of scrimmage. Rager in particular, no. Well, I mean, there are a variety of reasons to be truthful, but one of them. Mm-hmm. Okay, I mean. So rub routes help you get off the line of scrimmage. The touchdown to Devontae Smith, the first one in the Atlanta game, his first TD ever in the NFL, was off of a rub route. We do a lot of rub routes. We do it. I think we get a lot of man coverage, and that's helpful with that. What are your thoughts on that, so I can more meaningfully contribute?
Truthfully, our guys stink at beating man press.
Okay. We said the same thing different ways. Yeah. Our receivers are small and can't get on the line of scrimmage, get off physical. You said they can't be man press. Yeah, for sure.
That's what I'm seeing. And then even, like, it gets really frustrating with Rager, because I think there are times that Rager's anticipating man press and they're really using a match and mirror concept. Explain that, guys. Man press is when you physically put your hand on the receiver. Match and mirror is when you're just up close on them and you're just mirroring every motion they take. So if you're expecting to have contact and you don't release off the line of scrimmage the way you should, it looks really bad on film, to say that very politely. And I do see issues to where I feel like this offense, and this is a separate conversation, and we can do another live stream on it another date and time to get into the depths of this one. I think this offense needs a boundary side, a true X-line boundary side receiver, or a guy that gives you flexibility to play the boundary in a tall slot that can go catch the football in contested windows and can beat that man press. I don't think we got that guy.
Agreed.
And I think it's holding back the offense a little bit. You know, we put a lot on the quarterbacks, and the quarterbacks deserve blame at times because there are some nuanced things there that I think should be discussed. I'll be honest with you. I think Jalen Hurts struggles to throw in breaking routes with timing and anticipation. You know, that's true. I question if Minshew has the arm strength against a good pass rush and tight coverage to get the ball in there on an in breaking route. You know, I'm not sure on that one. Like, he'd have to demonstrate that to me. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's always the wide receivers, but they got a role to play in this. You know what I mean?
For sure.
We don't have that. We don't have that eraser out there, the guy that can erase mistakes. And I think we're paying a little bit for that. You know what I mean? Like, just that guy's just not there.
Yeah. So like I said earlier, is that zero margin for error offense. It's not just the run game and winning games 10-7 or whatever it is. Although we did have some blowouts in the midseason, which were nice that I miss. It's that everything needs to be perfect because we don't have the type of players, role-wise, measurable-wise, upside-wise, on offense, at receiver, and other places to create that margin for error. We just don't. We have to be basically perfect.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. There's just, like you said, you know, you have to operate this offense with such small margin of error that even the small little things look really bad on film. It really stands out. So we're going to go ahead at this time, guys. We're going to switch over to the second possession of Atlanta. It does, I believe, ends with a 4-and-out at one point when we had a lot of momentum in that one. So, you know, spoiler alert, you're probably not going to be happy with the end result, guys, but we'll break it down and we'll try to do our best to explain what kind of happened in the flow of that one. So let me go ahead and go to share screen. Sorry, guys. It's always a few seconds behind. It's just the connection to the internet right now is a little slower than I'd like it to be. But hopefully it'll start here in a second. So that one's kind of it's a disappointing way to end that series because there was momentum. The Eagles did have some progression in that one, but I think we saw where a young quarterback was in terms of executing certain plays, and some of it's not him, right? I mean, Devontae Smith, the ball placement's off. He should have made that catch.
Right.
With that said, we saw him leave the pocket too soon. He feels pressure coming from a lot of side. Instead of sliding up and then maybe even sliding left, he ends up eluding the pocket. Earlier in that progression of plays, it worked for him, right? He could have slid up and he could have slid up and hit the running back, or he could have did what he did, which is leave the pocket, extend it outwards, go off schedule, and hit the tight end. But same possession later in the game, it kind of comes back to haunt him a little bit there.
For sure.
It's all about the rhythm and the feel to the game. And I do think that Jalen is getting a little better at some of these things. Like I said, guys, we see that he's definitely been putting in work when it comes to staying on schedule with the offense. I'm not saying that it's there and it's where it needs to be ultimately, but there has been like a progression towards what you want to see from a guy you're going to hand the keys to. So, I mean, it's tough, man. This is tough because anytime a series ends, it's never really, unless a guy throws a pick and it's a very obvious and blatant pick. Most of the time, there's some nuance, right? There's a lot of things that went wrong that caused the series to come to an end. But this one had chance. There were chances in this one. Definitely chances for conversion.
So I think, this is good because it's a lot of what we're talking about. Receivers on crossing routes, especially shallow crossers. We saw a lot of that in what you just showed. And we showed Hurts drifting, floating off to the right, oftentimes unnecessarily. And he has gotten better about that, especially, mid-season, New Orleans, Denver, etc. But this is a great example of showing Hurts, not necessarily at his worst, but as maybe his least developed. And shallow crossers are great because, especially if you have someone to keep the safeties deep, it's all about creating space. And obviously in the NFL, you want to be able to make consistent tight throws consistently. I don't know if he's there yet. I don't think he is. But if you can create some space in the passing game and create that room for the yak, and our receivers are yak receivers. They're small and they're fast. That's the one advantage that they have. And, you got to create some space underneath. So we got some underneath routes. The issue is Hurts' lack of anticipation, field vision, etc., and then leaving the pocket too early and throwing off platform. That's certainly what I saw.
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head here, which is simply put, if someone asks, give me a series where it shows where Jalen Hurts needs the development, that's a good series to show. That would be a very good one to show that, like, look, you can see there's talent there, but we can also see the areas of development that have to occur. It's quite obvious when you see it broken down on film like that.
For sure.
With that said, I will say that both of these games, I will caution everybody. Take everything with a grain of salt here because these are not good opponents. I think Atlanta has gotten better as the course of the season has gone on. This is not a great defense, though. And the Jets are a horrible defense, to be quite honest about it. So we're presenting you two teams that give you an opportunity to put your best foot forward. So always kind of keep that in mind, guys, as we're going through this, that has to be taken into consideration with these two organizations that we're showing film of. With that said, I want to go ahead and get into this last, the Jets game. I'm going to get into that second possession, and I want to talk about what's going on here from a scheme concept, what they did, how they were able to execute, what we saw on film, guys, and then we'll round it out by a final conversation on everything. Sorry, it takes a few seconds to upload everything, y'all. Just give me 1 minute. I got to share the screen and do that whole thing again. It's always funny. I always wait till I hear the noise. All right. So really well executed, series there from the Eagles on that play calling. I really like what I saw from the little subtle things, right? So first possession of the game, they're in like 12 and 13 man exclusively. Then they come out and they punch in the mouth with 11 man personnel. And they get you thinking like, okay, they're going to try to spread this and they're going to well, no, they're going right back to that tight end screen, right? They're keeping this quarterback in a rhythm. So that way, when he has the opportunity to take those deeper shots, it's there. And that's something I'm a big proponent of from quarterbacks is establish the rhythm, use your running game to help you establish that rhythm to an extent. And then when the opportunities are there, take your splash play. And I think that they did really well in the Jets game early on of doing that. Those first two possessions, that's very much what was happening.
For sure. I mean, easy reads, easy throws, staying ahead of the chains, and really to go back to more of your shallower point, your smaller point, I like it too. Basically, it's the same concept, it's the same thing, but you're making it look different. So you're creating conflict in the defense, and it's good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you're just fooling the eyes of the defense. It's messing with the eyes of the defense. Now, mind you, this is not a good defense, guys. We're adding that disclaimer. We understand that. With that said, you have to evaluate the tape that's in front of you, and I'm evaluating two similar opponents. I think defensively, I think it's fair to put these two up against each other. I mean, I don't think either team is world beaters defensively, and I wanted to see the play calling. Like, how did Nick try to attack these guys? Right? I mean, on one hand, Atlanta had no idea what to expect from Nick's offense and Jalen Hurts. On the other hand, the Jets had no idea clearly what to expect from Nick Sirianni and Gardner Minshew. So I think it's a pretty good. It's not apples to apples, but it's as close as we're going to be able to get it, given the nature of this season, I think. And I will say the thing that people will probably point out, and I want to get your take on it, Allie. People are probably going to point out the fact that we did kind of tail away from the run game on the second possession of the Atlanta game. What is your thoughts of when you start seeing coaches tail away from the run game?
So it sort of depends, and I like how you kind of couch that. So to give credit to the coaches, they didn't know who they had. They took joint practices more seriously than they took preseason games, and it's like, okay, a lot of new guys on offense. We're all new. No one knows really what they're doing. To be fair, I'm joking a little bit, right? I don't like running. I don't like going away from the run game in general, especially once the identity has been established with New Orleans, with the Broncos, even with the Chargers a little bit. Like, that move is the move that I'm more worried about, kind of big picture, long term. I actually like Miles Sanders. Let me say something about Miles Sanders real quick, because that's kind of on your point. He's got a reputation and a record, and his reputation is way worse than his record. He absolutely stunk last year, but then so did everybody else, right? He couldn't catch the ball. Miles Sanders is a good overall running back. He's not great situationally. He's not great backed up or in the red zone. He's not great. I'm trying to think of what his other issues are. He's not great in high-risk situations.
Bro, he needs a lot of work.
Yeah, he does. But when the world is not ready to come to an end, he has great potential and great upside. He's fast. He's explosive. He's athletic. He can catch the ball. You saw that in the Atlanta game, going back to that. Historically this season, he's actually been a very good receiver. He's batting 2 minutes. Refuses to stay in bounds. Other than that, he's got some skill. He's got some talent. He's got some other running backs. I'm a huge Howard fan. I like Scott as well. Gainwell has actually been good, with some versatility there too. So the run game is good. We should definitely make it an intentional part of the offense. As far as the Atlanta game goes, I don't know that they knew what we had. And I don't think it's fair to expect that they did. And there was a difference.
I want to get to Jalen. Jalen asked a really good question, and I think it ties really well into what you're saying. I want to get your thoughts on it. Which, mind you guys, please understand, Allie and I have no control over what this front office does. We can only give our perspective as guys who, we've coached. Both of us have coached. Both of us have played. We can only give our perspective from that standpoint. Miles Sanders. We both agree, Allie, that he's really good. This is a really good football player, but there are limitations, such as you probably have to have a 2-minute back with him. He's probably not the most stable guy in pass pro on third downs. I think he's better running between the tackles than he's given credit for, but he's not Jordan Howard. He's not a contact balance back. but he's more of a north and south runner than people think.
Agree.
He's more of a one cut, I guess we should say. With that said, how do you analyze this in terms of his contract? Is this a young man, in your opinion, Ali, you would extend a contract to because you still think he's that vital to the Philadelphia Eagles offense?
I wouldn't say he's vital. I would say he's a luxury. And I'm on YouTube a lot, and I read comments. Love your poll, by the way. I'm going to get to that in a minute. You're a very good poll.
Thank you.
If he's willing to take top 18 money or something team friendly, so basically, okay, he is a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, a Bugatti. The question is, what kind of offense are you? You're going to be off-roading? Maybe not your guy for that. But if you're talking about Grand Prix or something like that, and you can keep the offense containable, predictable, whatever, control the madness and the mess around him, he can be a great asset to your team. I wouldn't say that he's necessary. I would say that he's a really nice luxury to have. He's still on the rookie deal for what, 1 or 2 more seasons?
Next year.
Next year. So I see no reason to get rid of him before the end of next year. I mean, none. He's a luxury. He's valuable. The question is, do you extend him beyond that? Do you pay him a bunch of money? I mean, as a general rule in the NFL, you don't pay running backs a lot of money. You don't select him with the second pick the way the Giants. Saquon Barkley is good, but he's injured a lot. There are other limitations with him. So I would be fine extending him, like you said on that poll, top 18, something team-friendly. He is a luxury, and he's valuable, but he's not necessary to make the team work at a high level if you scheme it the right way.
Is Jalen Williams, are you in Allie's ear? Because, you two would get along, Allie. You guys have the same exact points about Miles Sanders. Let me give the different – no, I'm joking. You guys are right. Ultimately, the two of you are right, Allie, you and Jalen, which is he's a luxury, right? He's a very good football player. He does make this team better, I think, in many instances. But I do think the limitations have to be considered, which is he's not a 2-minute back, and that's why Kenneth Gainwell had an early, role in this football team. He's not a very good pass pro back, which is why I was a little eerie on leaving a guy like Jordan Howard. No matter how much you use him, that guy could definitely have a role in pass pro. I was a little weary of that. I honestly think Boston Scott might be a better pass pro back than Miles Sanders, and neither one of them are great. So, I mean, I get it. I get exactly what you two are saying, which is you do have to consider the fact that, what's the value? What's the market for running backs? Where does his agent and Miles see himself in that market? And what's that number come out to? Because, running backs are kind of a dime a dozen if you're just looking at running between the tackles, having a good offensive line and getting pushed and running a guy. Now, there are other things that running backs do that I think differentiates good backs from, average backs. But nonetheless, I mean, I think you can get a guy that is adequate in free agency or the draft pretty much every year. I definitely agree with that line of thought. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And it's a tough one because I do think Miles Sanders, like I said, when I analyze this roster, I do think Miles Sanders is one of the more talented players on the Eagles roster, which probably says a lot about our roster in the same breath.
Right.
Now,
I don't know if I'm using the right terminology. I would say that he's a plus player. I would say that I would love to see him, hopefully next season, maybe the rest of this season as well, really work off of Jalen in the run game. So I think, big picture macro, I think the coaches need to be more considerate of different pass concepts in terms of shallow crossing routes, stuff like that. I think that they need to be more intentional about his use in the running game, less numbers-based RPO, more movement-based RPO, stuff like that. More read option. I mean, everybody's healthy except for Miles gets hurt a lot. It is what it is. This is a collision sport. It happens. I'm not dissing Miles for that.
absolutely.
We have some nice athleticism, both between the tackles and around the perimeter. We've got the best run blocking line in football, and we just need to use it a little bit more intentionally than I think we are for various reasons.
So I want to get into the topic I'm pretty sure everyone wants to hear us discuss here. There's a couple of competing comments. I would pull more comments up, but the connection's really slow, guys. So it's taking forever. But Mike says Hurts is a ball hog, takes plays away from running backs, not a good thing. I disagree with that, man. That's part of the RPO offense. You have to understand what he's reading and why he's doing what he's doing. Now, you can make the argument that he misreads things at times, especially when teams give him disguise, like Tampa Bay, where they'll show you a certain amount of guys in the box and immediately post-snap they drop out of it. And then in the same breath, 2020, says Hurts will not have eye-opening passing yards, but Hurts will have eye-popping production. In 16 games, Hurts has 4,500 total yards, 31 total touchdowns, and 11 interceptions, 11 turnovers. Yeah, that's the juxtaposition here, right? That's what we're trying to do is assess the modern NFL. Because yes, there was an era of football where this probably wouldn't have worked, but this is a different game, and that's got to be taken into consideration now. Now, what I will say is this: I've heard two arguments, Allie. I've heard two arguments, and we talked about this backstage, right? A running quarterback has never won the Super Bowl. I think that's flawed logic, but we're just going to run with that because I do think number one, define running quarterback. Like, what do you mean by that? But number two, Steve Young. The other side of this is I've heard this flawed logic, which is a quarterback who doesn't have a ball velocity over 54 miles per hour has never won a Super Bowl. That's flawed to me because, simply put, guys can improve ball velocity. You can make subtle improvements there. It happens. Tom Brady did it. A lot of guys have. Drew Brees improved his ball velocity. Those guys were not 54-mile-per-hour throwers coming out of college. They had to work their way up to that. Peyton Manning improved his. So to me, I don't agree with the whole thing of just because something has never been done that it will never be done.
Right. I mean, Bill Belichick threw the ball 3 times. Now, obviously, the conditions were a concern, right? He threw the ball 3 times in a game. Again, it's an absurd example, but it exists. You've got Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen with horrible numbers their first year or two, and then I'd say would you call them franchise quarterbacks? That term is so overused. Would you call them both franchise quarterbacks?
I guess it depends on what you mean by franchise. You know what I mean?
Right. So that one of the big problems we talk about franchise quarterbacks and sustainability. We never really define our terms. Hopefully, being the cerebral football people we are, we can talk about that going forward. What I'll say is this: historically, so there was football, and then there was the run and shoot in the 1980s. And in the 1980s, they were like, well, there are all these big, fast, slow linebackers. We have these faster running backs and tight ends. Let's show the quick, efficient passing game. Let's exploit the matchups. And then eventually what happened is, the defenses figured that out. They're getting safeties, 220-pound guys calling them linebackers to fight that trend. And when that happens, you can spread the defense with doubles, and you can run the ball right at those 220-pound guys, and you can get a Jordan Howard, a Boston Scott, great yards after contact people as examples, and you can have a great running game on the inside. And then you can still have a Miles Sanders on your roster. You can still have a Jalen Hurts or whatever, and you can exploit angles all day. What are your thoughts? So that's one part of the argument. The other part is the NFL loves money and ratings, and throwing the ball gets ratings and makes money. So the rules have changed a lot recently-ish, and quarterbacks and receivers are protected where running backs are not. So the rules of the game make it a lot easier to throw the ball to set up the run, and that term is used so often, no one ever defines exactly what that means. But what are your thoughts on kind of those two arguments and the room for something to be created here, certainly the rest of this season, potentially even going into the next season?
Yeah, it's tough, man, because here's the thing. Here's the thing I'll say about a stationary athlete, right? So we're talking about a static athlete versus a dynamic athlete. If you're a static athlete and you're just a stationary guy, you don't have the ability to make subtle adjustments and movements from the pocket. That's going to be a bit of an issue if you can't read coverage. If you're just not nuanced, right? You're probably going to be out of the league pretty quickly. Sure. But the more dynamic you are as an athlete, the more time you can buy yourself. And these things they're on a sliding scale, guys. So it's not like there's this hard line. You know what I mean? Like, guys are on a scale of this stuff. So I would argue that Donovan McNabb probably doesn't become the guy he became if it wasn't for his ability to make plays outside of the pocket as he learned and progressed through time to read NFL coverages and things. I do think that's true of Steve Young. He wasn't that great in Tampa Bay. As a matter of fact, they let him go. Took him some time behind the bench in San Francisco to be able to marry his athletic abilities with his knowledge over the game and coverage. I also want to make one distinction here, because I think this gets carried away sometimes with people. Please understand, when we talk about the intelligence of seeing the field, we are not talking about a man's overall intelligence. The guy could be writing, he could be the next Shakespeare for all I know. I don't know. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about their ability to diagnose what's happened defensively. Those are completely different things, in my opinion. What I will say is that Carson Wentz, he seemed to regress. And that's something I hadn't saw from a quarterback before, to where a guy looked like he was really getting it from 2016 to 2017, was really reading the field well. Then he has this crazy stretch in 2019, and the guy I saw in 2020 looked like a guy that couldn't read an NFL defense to save his life. There's a lot of weird things going on with the game right now, and I don't know, ultimately, I don't know if Jalen Hurts is the guy. I'm not trying to sell that to anybody. But I don't know that the excuses I'm hearing given by people mean he's not the guy either. Because the simple fact is that you do have to look at the complete package. And yes, I agree, guys. He struggles to read defenses. He is very, very mechanically flawed as a passer. He has an elongated delivery that gets him in trouble with the football. When he gets pressed or pushed to do something, I think he can be turnover. He can be a guy that can commit a lot of turnovers if he starts really feeling the pressure and starts pushing it instead of just playing true to what he is. With that said, man, I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't think that, I see the comparisons that people are making. I don't think this young man is RG3. I think different types of quarterbacks. That's like saying he's Colin Kaepernick to me. They're different quarterbacks. They give you some of the same, athletic profile in terms of being able to run the ball, but let's be honest. Colin Kaepernick had a rocket for an arm, and he was a better athlete. Although I think Jalen is pretty good at diagnosing, seeing things in running lanes and getting through running lanes. He's kind of a weird athlete like that. I just think people leave out the scale, Ali. I think they leave out the fact that these guys are on a sliding scale.
For sure, I'd agree with that. And, Twitter certainly doesn't help. I'm not complaining about Twitter. Twitter is great. But, yeah, the age of the internet and everyone having an opinion, that certainly contributes to that for sure. The lack of nuance.
Yeah, and I agree that Jalen Hurts is a really weird guy to qualify, because I think there are differences between, I think there's a tier of guys like RG3 and Lamar Jackson and Colin Kaepernick who are in one class of quarterbacks. Then there's these weird in-between guys that I think is like Steve McNair and Donovan McNabb and Steve Young and those type of guys. And I think Jalen Hurts is like this weird island in between those two. I don't know if that makes sense, Ali, what I'm trying to say, but he's in a weird place between those two categories of quarterbacks.
Sure. Well, so for example, where would you compare him to, say, Mike Vick?
Mike Vick it's an interesting comparison, right? Because Mike Vick definitely used his athletic profile to get him through. Wasn't even trying to learn how to read defenses or to do any of that until he really got to Philadelphia. Yeah, I think he's a less athletic version of it. I think he's definitely, Michael Vick makes sense because he has a lot of arm talent. Mike Vick probably has better arm talent than Hurts, to be honest.
Sure.
From what I've seen from his NFL career. He was not very good at reading defenses, and he got away with just being the best athlete on the field for a very long time. But he never really got to the big game. He was kind of knocked out.
Yeah.
I could see that. I would probably say Michael Vick is still probably, no, I get your point. I don't think that Michael Vick is an RG3 or Lamar Jackson. I do think he's kind of on that island. I kind of see where you're going with that. So where, yes, he used his running ability, but it wasn't like what they're doing with Lamar Jackson.
Right.
Vick, it was when the pocket completely broke down, he took off.
I think maybe the Eagles, at least over the next 4 games, just to see what's there, should try more of a Lamar Jackson type thing, just to be intentional about his role in the running game, not as an out of schedule, second read type of thing. Okay, if this is there, you throw it. If this is there, you hand it off. If none of these things are there, you stay on schedule, quote unquote, as part of the game plan, but you run the ball. He did that a ton against the Giants with a lot of success. And so he has that capability. He's done that really all season. I would say compared to Vick, yeah, he's got less of a strong arm. I would say he's less fast, but he's got great change of gear ability, both side to side and slowing up. And I think he's going to be a lot more durable, at least running the football. I think Mike Vick getting beaten up the way that he did, a lot of that was just taking hits in the pocket, to be honest, based on what I saw. And so long as he can be used the right way, he could be really good. He could be I don't want to say a lesser version of Mike Vick, but he could be on an island like we're talking about. I'm curious, another Philly example for some of our older listeners and viewers. Randall Cunningham, the ultimate weapon. What are your thoughts on that?
Completely different era of football. I do think that there was more. I think there was a little bit more in terms of the designed run stuff for Randall, but a lot of that was playing off schedule. It was him playing off schedule. Very strong arm quarterback, and a few guys, Dan Burrito and some of y'all. Some of you guys, I'm not trying to be offensive by this, but you guys don't know how to judge quarterback arm strength. You're looking at things that don't matter. The only play that matters in terms of judging a quarterback's arm strength is a timing route on a far hash throw. So unless you can put those two side to side, it's a guesstimation, to be quite honest. There's not a dude out there who hasn't played football who can't throw the ball 20, 25 yards down the field. It's not that difficult of a throw. It's harder to fit it into windows, when you got really good coverage. But most people got the arm strength to throw that far. The only thing to me that matters is far hash throw, timing route, what kind of velocity can you put on the football? So unless you got those side by side, it's a guesstimation. Now, my guesstimation is that, yes, Michael Vick had a way better arm than Hurts. But you're over-crediting Michael Vick. He did not have one of the strongest arms in NFL history. That's a gross overstatement.
For sure.
With that said, Randall was a very talented player. I don't think that the league was ready for a guy of Randall's athletic ability yet. I don't think the coaching and the design and the concepts had caught up to a guy of that kind of athletic profile yet. I do, you saw him go to Minnesota and have really good success late in his career. He got to the NFC Championship game. He had an undefeated football team there for a minute until they kind of fell short on a really bad kick. But, I don't boo-hoo, Minnesota. With that said, there's all these different tiers of quarterbacks. And I think the overarching point that I think we're trying to make to people is that the more dynamic of an athlete you are, the longer they're going to give you to develop normally. Now, I'm not saying what the Eagles are going to do because I don't know. It seems like to me that the front office is pretty split on this decision personally.
Agreed. Let's use the Miles Sanders analogy as an example. So a lot of people talk about quarterbacks creating outside of structure. I would say that running backs can do that too. I would say that Miles Sanders has that ability. In fact, one of his issues is sometimes he fights against structure. He fights against the rhythm, the flow, the blocking, the whatever. Yeah. Not all the time. That's his reputation being worse than his record. He's not that bad, but he has the ability. So the reason that Saquon Barkley, other people are drafted, early on, they have this ability, I'm going to call it this plus ability, to create outside of structure. If your team is utter dog poo, then you still have the ability to make some plays and win one or two games because you have these playmakers on your team that are just that good, that are just that talented, that are just that athletic. Even if the coaching is bad, even if the line play is bad, even if all of it's bad around you to a degree, of course, you still have the ability to produce, and Miles Sanders gives you that. The difficulty is best offensive line, especially run blocking in football. Coaches that are learning as they go, a quarterback that's turning into a real dual threat. Obviously, needs to work on the passing game some more, for sure, in a lot of different ways. But I would say, okay, so to answer Jalen, was that his name? From earlier, to answer the Miles Sanders question, Miles Sanders is not necessary on this offense. He might be necessary on an offense with less quality structure in the run game, right? If you have less of a high-quality offensive line, if you have less of a quality of a offensive line coach, right? We have the best in the game in both cases.
Sure.
But Jacksonville, for example, I don't want to diss Jacksonville. You get my point. Detroit, maybe. I don't know. I'm just saying these are really, really bad teams. Maybe the Jets. There are teams that have bad situations, and Miles Sanders can be a huge advantage in a bad situation. And so, but in a great situation or in a good situation like we have, he doesn't necessarily make the good situation outstanding. Does that make sense?
Sure, absolutely. Jeremiah Butler, I'm trying to pull your comment up, man. I appreciate the super chat. He said it's so funny how everyone is so fascinated by a cannon, and yet we have a Hall of Fame GOAT still playing with the least amount of arm talent. I wouldn't say he has the least amount of arm talent. Your point is very well taken, Jeremiah, in that Tom Brady got better with arm talent over time. But he won a couple of Super Bowls where he was not zipping the ball in there. That was not his game. They won off of the running game. And that's very much true in defense. Tom Brady did get recorded at 61 mile per hour velocity back in 2019, which is a remarkable improvement because he was probably a lower 50s thrower before that, early in his career. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, the thing is that like arm velocity can be improved. It can be improved with, it's like saying that a guy can't improve his bench press. Yeah, he can. There's genetics to it, sure. But a guy can improve on ball velocity. Like I've literally participated in camps where we help guys. I'm not talking about from the physical training standpoint. It's part of the regiment, but we help guys from their technique in terms of how you properly release the football. So that way they get the best base to throw from to get a little torque on the ball. So that way they can learn how to drive the ball. I mean, it's not the death sentence that people think it is, but it is a question when you look at a guy like Gardner Minshew who reads defenses really well. The issue with Gardner is not his ability to diagnose what's going on from the defense. In my opinion, it's an opinion because it's not like I'm sitting there having coffee with Howie and the rest of the executives. But I think that the league is a little weary of his arm talent. And I think that's why he hasn't been named the guy. Although I do think that he's better than a lot of guys out there starting on Sunday. I definitely think that's true, Jeremiah. It can be both ways. You can have a guy that the front offices are a little uncertain of, but at the same time, outside of the arm talent, he's better than most of the guys starting on Sunday. He's better than a good portion of them. I'd say at least a third of the guys in the league that are starting on Sundays are probably not as good as Gardner Minshew, to be quite honest. I mean, where do you put that at?
So it fits nicely into what you were talking about. So Gardner Minshew hasn't hit his ceiling yet, arm strength wise. I think a lot of that's based on technique, which is exactly what you're talking about. So it's about throwing from a solid platform. It's about the arm angles. It's about the length of the delivery itself in some cases, although that's more about speed than about power. So Gardner's thing, and we can take another look at the film sometimes and really kind of suss it out, especially if for some reason Gardner starts a game here and there in the next 4, which I don't anticipate, but who knows.
Sure.
Gardner can be a toes thrower. Gardner can, based on what I've seen, he can get up on his toes when he throws the ball, as opposed to having a firm plant foot, for example, your left plant foot pointing at the target. So when you do that, you diminish both your arm strength and your accuracy when you don't throw off of a solid platform. Now, to be fair, on that first underthrow, he had pressure in his face. He couldn't really follow through full on. That happens.
Exactly.
The second throw, he had a super clean pocket. And what I'm saying is
he chicken winged it. Yeah, absolutely. Those are two completely different throws to assess the underthrow on. And to Mike P, I understand this isn't minor league baseball, but it doesn't have to be. There is documented improvement from professional quarterbacks who got better in terms of strengthening their arms. Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning are the big three that are pointed to that have documented cases of NFL executives having problems with their arm strength, and these guys working for a number of years to improve it and getting there. Tom Brady being probably one of the best stories I ever heard of in terms of improvement in arm strength, arm talent. I mean, to go from like a low 50s to a low 60s, guys, when we talk about low 60s, understand the company you're in there. That's Josh Allen company, guys. That's Aaron Rodgers company. Now, there's different arguments to make here, which is, sure, he threw the ball one time at 60. Can he do it consistently? That I don't know. I would definitely still say Aaron Rodgers, and even Aaron Rodgers had to prove his, but it wasn't arm strength. It was more so the fundamentals of the throw. He was a high ball. He was a high placeholder with the football.
Let me ask you this in terms of G7's super chat. Thank you for that, if I'm reading that right. So, yeah, Hurts gives the defense more to think about. I mean, I'm a Hurts person anyway. I like his personality. I like a lot of stuff about his game. I tend to favor that type of quarterback play generally when you have that triple threat. Let me ask you this. We talked about it earlier, especially relevant to the Atlanta game. I'm not a huge fan of numbers-based RPOs where it's like you got 8 in the box, you throw it. The Giants, let me give the Giants credit. They gamed us, right? They watched the film. They saw 8 weeks of tape, whatever it was, and they're like, okay, this is what they do. And they have some wrinkles and whatever, but this is their game plan. This is what they do. This is what they like to do. So let's use their rules against them and force them to throw when half the time on 1st and 10 and basically on every single 2nd and long, they could have or perhaps should have run the ball, in my opinion, based on what I saw. And so you want to have that triple threat, like basketball, do you drive, do you shoot, do you pass, keep defenses off balance, create conflict. In terms of the Atlanta game in particular and other stuff that you've seen, moving to more of a read option-based offense or an RPO that's movement-based as opposed to numbers-based or leverage-based, do you see a future, at least for 4 games? Do you think that's a valid, quote-unquote, sustainable strategy for the rest of the season to make that a huge part of the game plan?
Tough question. I mean, you can. Absolutely. I mean, you can, and it can be effective, but a lot of it has to do with your opponent. It has to do with the execution of the players around you. Like, it's not a one-player game, unfortunately, and some of those things are hard to predict. And to be honest, zone reading for long durations of time worries me. You're exposing a guy to unnecessary hits. That kind of thing worries me. I don't think that Gardner Minshew is a stationary quarterback. That's not what I'm claiming, guys. I think Gardner Minshew is a functional athlete. He's good enough to burn you if you're not paying attention with his legs, but he's not. You're not running zone read with Gardner Minshew. To me, here's the real thing. You have to look at what's invested in each player. And I know some people are like, look, Gabe, I just want to win games now. And if I think this guy allows us to win games now, that's how I want to start. And that's your opinion. You're allowed to have it. And I'm not coming at you for having that opinion. I think it's a perfectly valid opinion. But you also have to understand that other people have different opinions too, which is I don't have to play Gardner Minshew to give him an opportunity next year. I got a guy I invested a 2nd-round pick in. I got a guy that very much has question marks. No doubt about it. He's got to prove some things. He may not prove them. I think that's a valid argument. He's not going to prove it. Okay, maybe he doesn't. But I got more invested in this guy. I'd rather give this guy the last 4 games personally. And then I explore the quarterback market if I'm just like, yo, this guy doesn't have it. We gave him the last 4 games. We tried to give him that chance to be, the Carson Wentz down the stretch in the division and win those division games, and he didn't do it. It's both perspectives I can see, man. Like I completely understand both perspectives here.
So I guess to dive more into it, so I understand exactly what you're saying about Gardner Minshew versus Jalen Hurts. We've been talking about that for a while now, but more focused on Jalen Hurts and an intentional use of the run game with him, more read option, less RPO, more of a movement-based RPO kind of scenario where you still have receiving threats in there as that triple threat that I've been talking about. Your concern is that it's not sustainable to overuse that word. Is it injury? Is it risk-based? Is it injury-based? Is it a risk based on injury? Is it that you think it'll be too schemed against too easily? What's your major concern?
Scheme scary. Like injury concerns me with having your quarterback take more than 15 hits in a game that are unnecessary. But also, I do think that I worry about teams catching up to you quickly on those type of plays. And I think that's the bigger concern is that we have to operate a little. You don't have to be completely out of a traditional based offense because, dirty little secret in the room here, guys, is that Kansas City's offense is highly RPO. It's very much a spread offense. It's a marriage between the West Coast and the spread. Arizona does the same thing. So teams do have success running this offense, but there's a balance between how often you're doing that versus traditional offense, and then also the personnel that you have on the team to execute the plays. So I think it's a lot going on here. Like, number one, I don't want a quarterback that is going to get hit that many times a game, just kind of tempting fate. Number two, I don't want something to become so predictable it's just really easy to pick up what we're doing. Then number three, I'm not completely sold that we even have the personnel to run it, to be quite honest. To run like over half our plays out of the spread concept. I thought we did. You look at Watkins, you look at Rager. Yeah, I wouldn't say Devontae as much, but Rager definitely I thought would be a pretty good, yak guy, yards after the contact, kind of yards after the catch kind of guy, and he just hasn't been that. And I think that's kind of a vital piece of the offense missing. I mean, truth be told, Dallas Goedert's better at it. To be straightforward.
No, sure.
You could maybe use your running backs. You could maybe use running backs like Kenneth Gainwell. Maybe you could try to throw from a personnel standpoint. You could probably throw a wrench in there with the Kenneth Gainwell and see what he can do.
For sure. So we're talking yak, which is great. And I do think our personnel-wise, our receivers are more yak people because of their speed and their physicality or lack thereof. One of the things, so let me give Minshew some credit for the Minshew fans in the room. I really like screens are screens, bravo, whatever. Screens are screens. I give that credit more to the coaching staff than anyone else. The coaching staff was very creative with that. They emptied the entire screen playbook on those first couple drives, basically. By the way, they maybe threw the ball 3 times in the second half. The second half was all run game, and they succeeded. They were very good at that. The Giants had, I'm still hung up on the Giants game a little bit. The Jets had the ball for 2 minutes or something like that. It was crazy. Anyway, I really loved the over routes to Quez that Minshew threw. They were great. We can absolutely take a look at them some other time. But that's an aspect. And Hurts has made those throws. He has. I've seen the film. I've seen the tape in the season. He just needs to do that consistently. And it would be great to find a way to incorporate those routes more often into the offense. That's a coaching thing. That's an execution thing. But, Minshew did a great job on those. I love those throws. Those impressed me. The game didn't impress me. The Jets didn't impress me. None of it impressed me. The only thing that impressed me was Minshew's throws on those over routes to various depths, the Quez, especially the last one.
Yeah, he did a really good job on that. The intermediate level game, he was a lot better than I thought he would be. And Dank Burrito, I think you're leading us into a really good way of ending this live stream today, which is Hurts can get better, but will he? You're banking on he will, but if he isn't, what is it? Dank, I'm not too sure if that was meant for us or if that was just you responding to someone in the chat, but we'll pick it up. True. We don't know. It's prognosticating. We're trying to predict the future. No doubt about it. I don't deny that. You never know if any guy's going to work out. But what I will say is to answer this, is I will say that you can look towards it like this. If you don't think you can get a Russell Wilson because he doesn't want to come here, if you can't get a Deshaun Watson because of the complexity of the legal situation, Aaron Rodgers has no interest in you. You don't like your positioning in the draft and you don't like the names in the 2022 draft. I know I got 2 guys I can make compete and can at least operate a respectable football team. So if I can trade some assets, if it's possible, you need 2 to tango. If I can trade assets to get 2023 and I feel like there's a better crop of guys, I think that's your answer.
I would agree with that. I think the question is, what's the window? Are we talking about 4 games or are we talking about 4 seasons? Are we talking about winning now or building a foundation for the future? So I think we talked about this earlier. Minshew has a higher floor but a lower ceiling. Now, obviously, that ceiling can be expanded a little bit with better technique, with better familiarity with personnel, all that stuff, but it's still a pretty low ceiling. And so, we might be able to squeeze in the playoffs, get embarrassed in Green Bay, whatever it is. That's entirely possible. Hurts has a higher ceiling, and he probably won't get there, but possibly is better than not possibly for me. So certainly for 4 games, okay, this is your baby. Let's figure some stuff out. Let's see what's doable for the future. The next 4 games, maybe next season. And it's like you said, it's basically an issue. I'm gonna get to Dank's follow up in a minute. It's a good follow up. And I almost want to get into it right now. So really, people like Pickett and Coral and all that stuff, and it's like, okay, what are you getting? And let me know when we need to go because I don't want to go too long. I don't want to take up too much of your time. But
no, you're good. I'm gonna run for 1 second. Keep on your point though, okay?
Sure. So there are various things you look for in a quarterback: leadership, athleticism, arm, arm talent, accuracy, athleticism, etc. The ability to read the field, throw receivers open. There's probably one other one that I'm forgetting. And Hurts is a great leader. In terms of leadership in the traditional sense, he's a pretty great athlete, and he's gotten better at throwing the ball. Obviously, he needs to do that more. But then you've got a formula that works running the football too. So it's like, okay, do we want to win now with more of a run-centric game? Do we want to, see what the deal is for next season? And so to get to Dane's question before Gate gets back on and we finish this up, it really depends on what your expectations are and what your hopes and your dreams are and what's more important to you. Do I think that Jalen Hurts will ever be an elite arm talent quarterback? No, probably not. Does he need to be to win games? No, probably not. Does he need to be, to do this or do that? It's certainly for the next 4 games and probably for the next next season at least. See what's there. Yes, you want to win games. Here's the thing, and I think this is where people are getting confused and emotional and whatever. We are not a playoff quality team. We should not be in the playoff conversation right now based on our personnel and whatever. This was supposed to be an evaluate Jalen year. But because things got weird and it's a weird season and we finally figured out we have a great offensive line coach, great running game, all that stuff mid-season, it's like, oh, wow, we can actually win games. We can beat these teams. And so it's like, okay, do we expect to be a Super Bowl team this year, next year? Or are we still in the rebuilding process? So, Dave, great question and follow-up. I think it's really about what your window is, what your goal is, what your purpose is when you're evaluating Hurts.
Yeah, I think there's 2 different things because you have the fans and then you have what the front offices do. So, I mean, I can't, Dank, I can't predict what fans are going to do. I mean, there's still people that hang on to the Carson Wentz thing. I mean, I thought Carson Wentz was a way more talented quarterback than he showed last year, but, the guy ain't here no more. Like, I'm an Eagles fan. I'm not a Carson Wentz fan. So, I mean.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about Carson either. We could. I don't really want to. Let me just say this briefly. He was a good quarterback that played very well around the best league, around the best roster in the league. That was a great team. Even the 2019 team was very good talent-wise. This team is not. It's just not.
Yeah, I agree. This team is there's some issues on this football team. Let's be honest, and that's where I think that the Eagles would be better suited in being careful of chasing quarterbacks. That's my fear is if you're chasing quarterbacks and you're giving away multiple first-round picks or some combination of multiple day 1 picks with a day 2 pick. We got a lot of things we got to improve on the roster. There's some spots defensively that need to be. There needs to be an infusion of youth especially along the defensive line in particular. Guys like Slay. I love Slay to death, man. He's a really good football player, but he's over 30. There's some things that need to happen on this football team, to be quite honest. And I do think that every choice you make, when you have 2 actions you can take, there's an opportunity cost. If you go chasing a Russell Wilson, if you go chasing an Aaron Rodgers, if you go chasing a Deshaun Watson, well, the opportunity cost is the team around him.
Those quarterbacks, especially Aaron Rodgers, I would say, maybe Russell Wilson to a slightly lesser degree, they are plus quarterbacks. They can take a team that is not as good, and because of their ability as players, they can create wins almost. I don't want to say almost by themselves. It's still a team sport, but they're luxuries. They're almost like Miles Sanders in that sense. I'm not trying to say he's like the greatest. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is probably the greatest quarterback in the NFL right now. Maybe Brady, maybe I don't know, 2 other people. Miles Sanders is not a top 5 running back. He shouldn't get paid as one to get to talk about your poll. At least I don't think so. But he's enough of a plus player. And Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson in particular, I'm not sure about Deshaun Watson legally or otherwise, are sufficiently plus players so they can help you win even with a deficient roster. Hurts is not he's got upside, right, with that athleticism and the triple threat ability, but he's not that person yet, and I don't know that he ever will be or needs to be. The question is, do you want to build with a quarterback first, or do you want to build your roster first? And that's another conversation.
Yeah, and I'm afraid that obviously, Ali, our opinion doesn't matter on it. It's the front office, but I'm afraid that their opinion on that is that it's the quarterback at any cost.
Right.
And to me, I agree that having the guy at signal caller is a really big part of the success formula. But I do think that there's a point of no return where you're giving up entirely too much to get that guy.
I almost think that the almost three first-round draft picks with Carson playing this weekend, maybe, if I'm right, that might be more of a curse than a blessing. It may be giving a kid too many toys, Howie, for example. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, I think my hope probably, and again, I'm not in the office, is that they will leverage those picks this year for similar picks next year when the quarterback market is more established. Bryce Young, for example, I think just winning the Heisman. I mean, that kid's got the tools, fewer questions around him than some of those other people. But yeah, we're not in the front office, and the fans are. Whether you played, coach, whatever, it's Howie, it's Lurie, it's one or two other guys, and they're making all the decisions, and that's what it is to be a fan.
Yeah, and that's the thing, guys. Is ultimately, I'm going to say I don't know what they're going to do. I know the coach came out and said that Jalen will be back there behind center, but then I heard Jason Avant say, "I don't know, man." So it's kind of like, I don't know. I'm just waiting on next Sunday. As long as we win the football game, I really couldn't care less who's behind center, personally. But I'm not. I don't know. I have no clue. I mean, I'd love to believe what the coach. Coach also said earlier in the week that Jalen was probably going to play.
Yeah, it's tough to read, and that kind of makes bye weeks bad too, because there's so much conversation. And all you can do is talk about the team and the roster and who's starting, as opposed to focusing on Washington or Dallas or the Giants or any of that. So it's going to be particularly bad this week.
Yeah. All right, everybody. We appreciate y'all so much. It's a little past 12:30 at this point. We've been going for an hour and a half. Thank y'all so much. Listen, Allie has graciously agreed to come back next weekend and do another show. We're going to shoot for Saturday, and we're going to break down the defense. The way we just broke down this quarterback position, we're going to break down the defense. We're going to give our perspective on what's going on. We haven't defined it yet, so we don't know exactly what games or what scenarios. We might not go games in this one. We might go more by scenario and hone in on a scenario and see how the defense has been playing, more so than actual game. But nonetheless, she's agreed to come back and do this once again, talk about what she's seeing from the film, and we're going to have an open discussion, and we hope you guys join us again. Thank you, Ali. I appreciate you.
Thanks.
All right, guys. We'll see y'all later. Hey, enjoy your football Sunday. Real quick before we jump off of here, who you guys voting for? Who y'all want today, Washington or Dallas? I can't get my heart into rooting for either team, guys. I just can't. What's your take on that? Do you want Dallas to lose so we have a shot at the division, or would you rather have Washington drop so we got a shot at the playoffs?
That is a tough call. I mean, the question is, can we really win the division? Are we going to be better than 500 in the next 4 games? So here's my thing. Here's my quick reaction to that. And to be fair, just real quick, I watched the Giants game yet again, because it bothered me. The play calling was pretty good. The execution was pretty good. Jalen made some bad throws. He made some bad decisions. He's got some bad tendencies that lead to bad throws. That's been the case the whole damn season, though. I mean, he's made 2 to 3 bad throws every single game. Sometimes in a double coverage, sometimes 2RX that it really isn't an X, and he stares him down. So the safety. By the way, McKinney is an absolute stud for the Giants. They played a lot of too high, especially towards the end of the game. But even playing single high, that guy is freaking Derwin James-esque. He's got that kind of sideline ability, and especially when Hurts stares people down and puts a lot of air underneath the ball, which he did on that pick in like the third quarter. I mean, he's just throwing those up. I mean, that was a bad throw. And receivers. Yes, it was 1st and 18. He had receivers open underneath. He needs to get more consistent and more confident in those underneath routes. The running game was pretty good. Obviously, Howard wasn't there. It wasn't as inventive or tricky or whatever. I want to see more of that from the coaches. So basically, if Jalen gets better about his decision-making, which is fixable quickly, relatively speaking, and with Jordan Howard back, we can be more intentional about the running game, and get Hurts more, quick crossing routes, more timing rhythm throws that should be relatively easy to read with the coverage. I'm gonna believe we're probably gonna go 500, but I'm gonna believe that we have a shot at the title. So I guess I am rooting for Washington today.
Yeah. Mike and Jeremiah, that was funny. They said tie.
That'd be cool.
We got a half a game on both.
Yeah. You know what? That's not bad. I think that works, actually.
All right, guys, we appreciate y'all so much. We'll see y'all next weekend, breaking down the defense. If you guys are tuning in late, you want to leave comments, leave them in the comments section. I'll try to answer as many as I can, but, I appreciate all the comments, guys. Sometimes it's tough to keep up with y'all because y'all be leaving some comments, and I really do appreciate it. All right, y'all. Peace. I'm out of here.